Good day, everybody. Good morning, good day. This is Michael Levitis from jurisq.com, and I represent two clients, two amazing women, attorney that does probates and elder law, Irina Yadgarova. Good morning. Hello. And we have with us associate real estate broker, a real powerhouse from Queens and Long Island, Olga Zakinova from Douglas Elliman. And today I brought two professionals together to discuss a very important topic. What happens when somebody passes away, they leave a house for their estate, for their descendants to deal with? It's a very painful issue, but it also has a lot of moving parts. So I have two real pros to explain what happens, okay? So ladies, once again, thank you for joining us. And let's start with Irina. As an attorney that does this every day, can you tell us, when you sell a house, must you sell a house when somebody passes away, their children, their relatives, their estate, right? Do they have to sell a house, or they can stay living in the house?
So the short answer, and for most cases, is no. In certain instances where the will or the trust instrument says that you must sell the house to the executor or the trustee, in those instances, the property must be sold within that time frame. Otherwise, for the vast majority of cases where you don't fit into that segment, you are welcome to either live on the property, and of course that will depend on how many other people are inheriting and if you have an agreement with them, or you can rent it out. There is no time frame, there's no deadline to sell the property.
But Irina, but what happens if there is a mortgage on the house? What do you have to do with the mortgage? Because the bank, I assume they want their money back, and the bank, the loan was given to the person who passed away.
Yeah, so that's a great question, but thankfully federal law permits whoever is inheriting, whether by will or by intestacy, by virtue of being a relative, whomever is inheriting can assume the mortgage, and they don't have to go through that same rigorous shakedown with, financial eligibility. So they can assume the mortgage. So that would not be an issue.
Got it. Okay, very good. Olga, but I assume in most cases, the estate, the descendants, the kids, if you will, they do want to sell a house because they want to maybe cash out. There's no longer a need for such a large house because unfortunately, maybe the parent is no longer there. There's no other parent. So you are in a situation where you may have to sell the house. So Olga, what are the steps when you sell a house post-death of a loved one?
Well, Michael, thank you for this wonderful question. And that happens a lot in our career. Actually, I had an appointment yesterday with a family where most of the family members are overseas. And the person that actually got through probate process and the person who got appointed by the executor is the son who is actually in New York. And so I'm assuming based on their story that every single one that's overseas is pushing him to sell the house because they all want to get their money and get paid.
Exactly.
So I was invited to the house. The house is located in Great Neck. As you can imagine, it's a multi-level home that has a lot of stuff. And the process begins very simple. We need to start clearing out everything that's in the home. So we could start with our professional photography, pictures, open houses, and exposure to the public.
And that's usually done by you because, like you said, a lot of times the kids may be away, different state, maybe even a different country, and they don't want to deal with that. So unfortunately, sometimes it falls on the broker to do this, right? To declutter the house, if you will.
Absolutely. But keep in mind that we have third-party companies that we constantly work with, and they are just a phone call away. So it really depends to what we get authorization to go ahead and start working on. It's just a matter of bringing dumpsters, bringing people to clean up and throw things out and stage it and organize it, and really bringing it to the point where we decide, do we want to sell it as is, or do we want to really go through all the tchotchkes and really get the house show ready for public?
Yeah. And I saw that on your website that we're going to have on the bottom of the screen, it says you work with Knight Frank International Network. Can you tell us what that is and what are the benefits of working with such a network?
Well, that's a very good question. Again, it goes back to the same family. They own multiple houses all over the world. And so we, as Douglas Elliman, have a very strong relationship and partnership with Knight Frank International.
Okay.
That means that any property that's listed in New York by us over $1 million automatically gets published and advertised on Knight Frank. Anything that you will refer me that's global, whether it's Italy, Israel, Greece, we just closed a deal in Greece. You know, one of my Ruslan agents had a referral in Greece. So we definitely always turn this around and make it happen for everyone, no matter where the clients are.
That's perfect. That makes it very smooth. And speaking of smooth, Irina, selling a home from under the estate, how do you make it smooth? What are the steps in selling a home of somebody who passed away?
Yeah, I mean, so you touched upon it. It's difficult because typically we'd have to go through the probate process in court or in administration. So either process is in the surrogate's court. So it's difficult for the surrogate's court process of probate or administration to go smoothly, and it depends on a ton of different factors. You know, if you have the original will, if the will was drafted properly, who's inheriting the property. So there's so many factors that go into probating the estate or doing the administration, and that's the first step.
Right.
So it takes a while. It can be complicated. There are cases, of course, where it can go smoothly, and it all depends on the facts. There's no like general broad stroke answer that I can give you.
And time-wise, can you tell us, let's say in Queens or Long Island, how long would it take to go through the probate process with the court to get the house released so you could sell it?
Yeah. So it certainly varies by borough, as you touched upon. In Queens, Long Island, I mean, I know in Queens, they don't look at what we file for at least about 8 weeks. But for them to get through everything, you're looking at, if everything is very smooth, you're looking at an ideal process of 3 to 6 months.
Wow.
And if not, it could take years. And it often does take years because, again, there's so many factors and so many estates that complicate matters. You know, if there was a delay, if there was a death of a beneficiary, if there's a first cousin who is the beneficiary, we have to appoint the public administrator if there's no will. There's so many factors that can complicate, guardian ad litem for minors. I mean, it really can. And I'm sure Olga can attest to this as well. It takes years. It's not me just spinning wheels. We see this on a day-to-day reality. It stretches years.
But Irina, there is a mechanism, as we discussed in our earlier videos with you, where you could make it go quicker. And I believe trust.
Yes, absolutely.
Instrument. Can you just touch upon briefly again, how with a trust you could make the transaction so much smoother to sell a house in the event of a death of a loved one?
Absolutely. So where you have a trust or where the property is owned jointly, so it does not have to go through the surrogate court process, there's no the court to get involved to give you the authority as the administrator or executor. The trustee will have immediate power to either retitle the deed or do whatever it says pursuant to the trust instrument. So there is no attorney's fees paid for probate. There's no executor fees paid for the administrator, right? Depending on what it says in the trust, of course. And most importantly, there is no time lag that we have with the court process.
Perfect.
So any trust will accomplish that.
Of
course,
and you as an attorney,
the trust goes along with.
Yeah. And you as an attorney, you're actually able to prepare such a trust beforehand.
Absolutely. Yes, that's what we do. And we retitle the property to make sure that everything is congruent.
Very good. Thank you.
Michael, I have a quick question for Irina. Irina, I recently had a case, which again, I was very surprised by that executor of the estate was able to get compensated in the amount up to 5% of the sale of the property. Are you coming across that very often?
Yeah. There's so many different things that can happen. By default, there's a statutory provision, the Surrogates Court Procedure Act, Section 2309, authorizes a graduated scale of percentage. But if you have a will or a trust, you can circumvent the default provisions of the statute, and you can provide for whatever you want that would be enforceable for the court. So it can't be something that wouldn't be enforceable and shocking, but 5% I can absolutely see, because I see attorneys who charge just for the probate, forget the sale. I've seen contracts with 3 to 6% of the estate that the attorneys charge to do the probate. Yeah, which is like on the very high end, because usually you can get an attorney to do this for a flat fee, much lower basis, regardless of the value of the estate. but I've seen it from time to time. So it can be these are the things that you need to plan for in advance so that your loved ones are not left with this expensive mess to deal with.
Exactly. That's the key. Don't wait until last minute. Don't wait until you're already in your retirement age. I would say start planning earlier to get all your ducks in a row for trust purposes, for tax purposes, for even getting Medicaid earlier. And that's something Arina and I discussed in our earlier videos. If you want to take a look, how you can even get Medicaid through a trust. Olga, we did a video just recently on drama-free real estate brokers. Okay, and if you guys want, you can watch it on our earlier podcasts. How does being drama-free as a broker especially help you when selling a home that is under probate, under estate, where a lot of parties involved, sometimes different conflicting interests between kids and relatives? Olga, let's get into that.
Well, Michael, this is why we invited Irina, right, into this conversation, because I personally feel that people, again, I mentioned this before, people do business with people they love and care about. And I think personally, personalities make a huge factor when you meet a person, just to understand whether or not through ups and downs of emotional process, which this is a very emotional process.
Sure.
This process will begin and end successfully. And I think attorneys make a huge impact on this process, right? And I feel like Irina has such a wonderful, soft, loving personality where that would definitely complement anyone who's going through this difficult process, not only to deal with us, that handling it all for them pretty much from the beginning to the end and overseeing the process, working together collectively with attorneys and every single one that's involved. But I think attorneys make a huge difference also in this process, and how they reciprocate the information with the brokers. I think it's like tremendous impact on the whole
100%.
picture.
Yeah. But a lot of times you as the broker have to make peace between family members, because maybe one son wants to sell, the other one doesn't, because of various reasons, sentimental, financial, what have you.
Yes. Well, people get very emotional about the process, right? And generally speaking, with COVID, I feel like people just emotionally got tremendously disturbed. The whole process really became even more complicated. I recently had a case where we had the home on the market. One of the brothers was not moving out of the house, unfortunately. He was just insisting to stay in the house. The brother who got appointed by the executor of the estate to really get this going. We signed the contract. We found the buyer. And he said, I'm not moving. Do as you will. And guess what happened? The aide came into the house, back and forth, in and out. 2 weeks later, I get a phone call that brother unfortunately got COVID and passed away. So just a lot of emotional roller coaster rides that we go through, where we need to kind of like keep it under control, not get emotional about it, keep in touch with the attorneys, making sure that everything gets properly coordinated, and really keep the client's emotions stable, under control, not to react. Rather than not to react with emotions, but stay focused on the goal. And what is the goal? It's to sell the property.
Yeah, I just have to add to that, because I see that all the time, and it's so often a drain on the value of the estate when they go to litigation for senseless things, like where there's an estate and there's no will, and all the children, let's say, are going to inherit equally, no matter how much they bang their head against the wall trying to get either more, and it's just a drain, because I'm going to charge more for my time opposing counsels, and often we can just have the beneficiaries be co-administrators. So we try to do everything we can in our office to make it amicable and listen to all the parties. I'm not a litigator, but sometimes, like Olga said, the emotions are too volatile, or there's too much, opposing interest, and we do sometimes end up in litigation because we can't avoid it. Again, something that often you as the person who's going to leave behind an estate can prevent in proper planning.
Yeah, Irina, that is so important to keep a cool head and keep track of the expenses, because if you go into litigation, it could be the whole estate could be spent on legal fees and nothing will be left for the descendants. So you got to take
It's really
emotions out
sad.
of it, as Olga said, and just steer the ship in the right direction, which is to actually sell the house and get everybody satisfied according to the will and according to the trust. But let's get into a little bit more about the expenses of selling a house that was in a probate. Irina, what are some of the costs? We touched upon some: executor. What else is involved? Court fees, transfer
Yeah.
title. What else is there?
Yeah, sure. All of that is involved. Their court fees, the highest court fee, which will apply for most of these, because real estate is over $500,000 typically, or the
Mhm.
share of the decedent's value. So if it's over $500,000, the court fee is $1,250.
Okay.
And then every certificate of appointment, it's a small cost, but it's $6 per certificate, like per title that you would need to
Mhm.
transfer. And then, of course, there are retitling fees. So there are city recording fees, and then there are attorney's fees for those attorneys who, such as myself, who retitle the deed on as the administrator's deed or the executor's deed, or to the eventual buyer. And those costs all vary. You have to budget for a few $1,000s there as well. So there's definitely costs on that end. And
What
those are
about
the minor costs.
right? Sure. But something that could be not minor, possibly, is estate tax, or is that no longer a big issue?
Oh, yeah. But yeah, so it's no longer an issue for the vast majority of
Right.
folks on the federal level, because the
Mhm.
exemption is over 22 million for
Okay.
combined. But on the state level, there is the cliff of anyone who passes away with over $6,100,000
Mhm.
as of this year. So the state, the New York state estate tax, however, is much lower than the federal tax.
Right.
And I mean, this issue merits like at least an hour-long separate segment. It's very
Right.
complicated,
Yeah.
but that's
But
just
briefly,
like,
what is an
yeah.
estate tax?
The
Irina, what
estate
is an
tax on the
estate tax?
the estate tax on the federal
No,
level is a
what
combined.
is estate tax?
It's a tax on any gifts that
Mhm.
you make during your lifetime, as well as post-mortem. So any estate that's left behind that's over that threshold that we discussed is very high now for
Right.
couples,
Mhm.
or for an individual, about 13 million. It's very high. But
Mhm.
anything over that gets taxed on 40%. So it's a
Wow.
super. So if you're accumulating wealth and you have a rapidly growing estate, you have to start planning and doing trusts that get these highly appreciating properties out of your taxable estate.
Yeah, you definitely have to start thinking about it if you're a high net worth individual, because you don't want 40% of your estate to go to the government. You want it to go to your kids somehow. So you have to consult an attorney that does this to make sure you have the proper instruments that could help you alleviate the tax pain. Olga, next question for you. So as a real estate broker, of course, you prepare a home for sale, make sure you get top value for it. And we did a video on that as well, how to prepare your home for top value to sell it. How would you prepare a home or deal with a estate sale as opposed to where people are still living and they're living in the house?
Well, Michael, please understand that 90% out of 100, when we are invited to a state sale property, it's most likely people that's been in the house for very, very, very long time. I have cases where people been in the house for 70 years. If they are, let's say, in their 90s, late 90s, and they bought this home in their 20s, they've probably been in this house for 70 years. So
Right.
keep in mind, usually those homes are, I wouldn't say neglected, but need tremendous amount of renovations.
Sure.
And what we do is we assess the value, not judging the actual situation of the house, right? We're not judging the value based on the condition of the house. Remember, in the end of the day, everything sells. If you price it right, everything sells. And we have investors that buy properties as is with, a situation where it's fully loaded with tchotchkes and stuff from newspapers, magazines, accumulated for years. And they just buy it as it is. They just bring dumpsters, they clear it out, they tear it down to the beams, they fix it up. Sometimes they rent them out and resell them. But my job is to really make a very peaceful understanding and judgment with the seller. What is it that they're looking to do? Are they looking to sell it as is and headache-free and drama-free? Just give me the keys, take all your valuables, take all your belongings, and just give me the keys and we deal with the rest. And we sell it to investors as is. And it's all cash deal in most cases, because most of the time those homes are not even mortgageable. Let me highlight, most
Really?
of the homes are not even mortgageable.
Why is that?
Well, because I have a case right now where the house haven't been touched for 70 years. There is peeling paint, there is broken doors, there is, you know, a sheetrock that needs to be
So
replaced.
it wouldn't
There's a lot
pass
of
the appraisal,
leaky
right?
roof.
Right.
You know, it's not going to pass appraisal. So in many cases, we have to really determine whether the house will be appraised and it's mortgageable, and in many cases it's not. So we need to really determine from the very beginning, very clearly, is it a pretty house that we could just showcase to the marketplace, just stage it, organize it, get rid of all the items that's not necessary to be presented to a next buyer so they could envision their future in their home? And or is it someone that's going to be rebuilding completely, knocking down the home and rebuilding from scratch? And or it's going to be something that's got renovation. But remember, everything has its price. Okay, and we spoke about it on the last video.
Exactly.
Everybody pays the price to maintain a house. So
Exactly.
you pay the price while you're living there, or you pay the price when you sell it. Everyone
Yeah.
will pay the price.
And we talked about how you can spend a little bit to
Yes.
spruce up the house, but you can get
Yeah.
much more money back in a sale. Like for example,
Absolutely.
you said even putting in a new kitchen,
Yes.
you can get how much more money back?
Well, I always say that
Percentage-wise?
you're gonna get it much faster, right? So if you're showcasing your brand new kitchen among 50 other homes that's on the market, you're gonna stand out much quicker. And remember,
Exactly.
the amount of clicks and the amount of views on Zillow, Truly, and Google that continue to pushes your interest of the property higher up on the ranking, that it's going to definitely
Okay.
benefit to get you more eyeballs, so you could turn down more offers if that's the case.
Yeah, and same with even repainting the house. Like you
Yes.
said, if it has peeling paint, very unappealing. Just repainting, it's not very expensive, but it could bring you triple back.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, buyers definitely have a lot of fear getting into homes that need a lot of attention. And in their mind, anything that to you and me would be about $50 to $100 just in paint,
Right.
they would assume it's thousands of dollars of expensive.
Plus the headache of coordinating
headache.
and doing it. Yeah.
Plus
And
the
you
headache.
said outside is extremely important. That's the first thing they see, right?
Curb
Making
appeal.
sure the landscaping is right,
Yes.
making sure the fence is painted.
Yes.
Not a big investment, but worth it.
Definitely. And this is going back to Irina's question, which I'm curious now. When you have a situation where the family is not on the same page and the house is kind of like being neglected, they're not paying their bills on time, they're not paying for a landscaper to come in and cut the grass. So now the curb appeal of the house, when it's time to put it on the market, with the grass growing up to like 6 feet, and you know, it just becomes extremely complicated. How do you handle this, Irina, when the expenses must be taken care of and people really in the family must be paying attention to maintaining the home generally, regardless of their emotional roller coaster?
That's tough. And when it comes to practical things like taking care of the actual property, I think that's where individuals like you, Olga, who have the right balance of personality between being aggressive enough, but yet understanding and have the emotional intelligence to understand their prerogative. I think that's where it's really important. And so working with someone like you is where you're the individual who helps make those day-to-day decisions come into fruition for these people. My job is to try to kind of make peace and enter them into agreements and have proper appraisals be balanced, where each party can have their own pick, so we don't pay triple for 3 appraisers, so we could just go with one and have a more impartial approach to the legal issues. And I think brokers like you are really where it helps on the day-to-day decision making in terms of taking care of the property, and attorneys really don't get involved in that.
See, this is why it's so important to have a good professional team behind you. And not only brokers, real estate brokers, attorneys, but also this team can recommend others. Let's say a mortgage broker, like you said, a company to clear out the items, perhaps a construction company. There are a lot of moving parts, and your job as professionals to bring them all together to facilitate the sale of this home.
Yes.
Irina, let's talk about logistics of selling a home that's in a state. What are the documents that are needed? Because person passes away, you may not know where the documents are. You may not even have the copies. So what do you need, and what happens if you don't have those documents?
Right. So you would need, I mean, if this is property that's devised in a will, you would need an original will. In New York, it's very difficult to get through probate if you don't have an original will.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Especially if the testator had it at the time of their passing, because it's presumed to be revoked. So an original will that's not unstapled, that's not marked up in the margins, because all of that is just a driver for the court to say maybe the person wanted to invalidate it, why are the staples missing? So all of that calls for more time, more affidavits.
So let's pause on this. This is very important. So the will, if you want it to be enforced, where should it be located? Who should be holding that will?
I generally recommend that the attorney keeps the original will. That's the only original that I would actually store, like powers of attorney, trusts. You know, the client gets all of the originals. And the only reason I like to store the original wills, it's not so that I have all the probate business, because the beneficiary can go to whichever lawyer they want. But it's because if the original will is picked up by the testator, by the person making the will before they pass away, obviously, and it's no longer found and only a copy is found, it's presumed to be revoked in New York. And then you have to rebut the presumption. But if the attorney's missing and that's why you don't have a copy, you know, something to that effect, then it's much easier to get a copy admitted to probate, because that presumption doesn't apply. So in other cases where there is no will, you know, as we go through the administration, the originals, you don't need an original deed to retitle. And most deeds going back, I believe, to the 80s are recorded on the ACRIS New York system, and with the county clerk and other counties like Long Island and upstate. So you don't need original deeds, but you do need obviously a copy. And of course, a title company can be helpful when it comes to that. I hope that answers the question. Let me know if you were looking for anything else on that.
Absolutely. And look, if anybody else has any questions, we're going to post this video everywhere. It's going to be on the YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, the websites of the attorney and the real estate broker, my website. If anybody has any questions, post comments below, and we're going to have the professionals answer their time at their leisure. But also, this seminar, we're giving general information, right? If you want specific information on your particular case, if you want to think about the future, or you want to go over what happened in the past, you have to reach out directly to Irina Yedgarova and Olga Zakinova to resolve your specific issue, your specific case, okay? Ladies, thank you so much for being with us. I love this team. I hope we're going to work together in the future on other seminars, other matters. I hope you're all going to work together with each other. And thank you for joining in. Everybody, have a great day. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.